Hello and welcome to another episode, this time in season three of Under the Hood, with yours truly and my wonderful guest, Alyce Daubenspeck. Thank you
That's
for
me.
being here.
Oh my
All
goodness,
the
thank you
way
for having
from
me.
Germany.
Jawohl. Flew in and my arms are tired.
No. Okay, so this is going to be a two-parter, which is a rare occurrence, if not maybe perhaps a debut on Under the Hood.
Ooh.
Um, Yeah, because I just feel like your story is rather unique.
Hmm.
Because as now you find yourself as a full-time employee at the Theater Ulm, working as a full-time opera singer in Germany. But we need to back up and tell the whole story. So, can you talk a little bit about were you in choir in undergrad? I mean, in high school? When did you start singing? What happened?
Um, I guess if you were to go through my mother's photo album on the coffee table there in Pennsylvania, you would discover that I started from the tender age of 4, performing in the church choir like a lot of singers.
Oh yeah.
And it's something I always loved. I always loved performing. I always loved singing. I always loved being part of the drama club and eventually the president of my high school drama club. So,
Wow, how's
um,
bragging camp going?
ooh, I was busy over here. I did participate in not only the school choruses, but all of the PMEA, the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association, the districts and the regionals and the states, for most of the years that I was in high school there. I was very musical too, as well as my sister Holly. We both were in band and orchestra. I played the
Okay.
euphonium in the marching band, but my true passion was definitely always singing. And
All
so
right.
from a young age, all the way growing up, as much as I could. Yeah.
So then obviously, at least for my story, then you go
Yeah.
to college and you major in vocal performance, like every person who's passionate about singing, right?
I did take a different direction with that. I went to Ithaca College for my undergraduate in
Excellent
2009.
school.
Love it. Um,
Go. What is their mascot there in Ithaca?
Bombers.
Oh, good.
Right. So I was a bomber for 4 to 5 years when I was at Ithaca College. I
Be careful
did not.
about. I just want to give you just a hair of feedback. Be careful of getting too close to your mic. You have a
Okay.
sonorous voice, and I just want to make
Yes,
sure that you don't overpower the mic. So yeah, so
absolutely.
you went to Ithaca College, go Bombers, and
Yes,
you don't have to
exactly.
go that far.
Just kidding. Sorry. Yeah. So I go Bombers. 2009. I went. And I actually studied. I got my degree from there. I graduated with my degree in environmental studies. It's
And
quite the
what
hippie back in the
what
day.
what drew
Yes.
you towards that?
I think that I simultaneously always had a really keen interest in the outdoors. It's a place that it has always brought me peace and I just it was such a part of my life all growing up in, Penns Woods, Pennsylvania. And it's something that I was also really passionate about. And some part of my young brain thought, oh, singing, that's scary. I'll never make it work. How am I going to pay my bills? And I felt that at the time that environmental studies would be an avenue of more security for me and my future. And so I did do my degree and earn my degree, my BA in environmental studies. But Ithaca being such an amazing school for music, I was lucky. I did do a music minor while I was there. So I participated in the women's chorale for all of the years under the conducting of Dr. Janet Galvan. I also was a student of Mark Webster, the voice teacher there, who I am a massive fan of to this day. And I had a lot of really cool performing experiences there as well. I also, right after I graduated, auditioned and had my first apprenticeship program in opera with Opera Ithaca. So it was kind of like something going on in the background while I was soil sampling in the woods during the
Well,
day.
obviously, if you audition for Opera Ithaca, then you are still. I mean, yeah. I mean, to say that it's in the background, it's almost like simul.
Yeah.
It's like right there alongside. Yeah.
Yes. If you want me to be totally honest about, I
No,
think,
lie. We like you to be about 78% honest here on Under the.
okay, so let me see.
Let's see. No,
Now,
no,
yeah.
total. Yeah, let's go. Let's go full transparency.
I think that because I was such an ADHD mess when I was younger,
Okay.
I actually, for one semester, was a Bachelor of Music with an outside field at Ithaca College. And then I changed out of that major after one semester, not because I didn't like it or I wasn't even, not that I was unsuccessful. I think I, at the time, did not have the level of maturity to be as consistent and disciplined as I needed to be to make it something that I could do sustainably in the long term.
Okay.
Whereas something much more free form, like environmental studies, was a lot at the time for me made a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
so it is definitely something to say it is in the background would be a lie. It is something I've always been very passionate about and very actively involved in. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay. So you did an apprenticeship with Opera Ithaca. How long did that last?
Yes. That one, I believe, was a year, but I've been invited back several times by the artistic director and then the current artistic director to do different roles.
Oh,
Things
good.
like, Marceline and La Notte di Figaro, and all sort of every time they need that sort of like, or like Ruth in Pirates of Penzance, like most recently. So, yeah, it's been something that I felt very much a part of and loved and supported from the get go. Yeah.
Now, those are two mezzo roles, but yet you're a soprano. So, talk a little bit about one of the things we do like to discuss on Under the Hood is sort of pitfalls that we've had along the way or
Hmm.
missteps so that younger students who might be watching this can sort of perhaps hear that like it's not all just like perfection that happens to get you from point A to point B, but
No.
even the best of us, stumble quite a bit. So,
Right. Right.
talk about
Yeah.
that journey.
Um, okay. Well, I think in the beginning, like most young singers, I was just sort of a young female voice, and that's how my training started at Ithaca, which I believe that's correct, right? Um, as I matured vocally and as a person, I sort of was, I'm sort of a Zwischenfach, right? Like, are you a mezzo who can sing high? Are you a soprano who has a fuller bottom? What's going on?
Hmm.
And it's sort of been always differences of opinions about that in different professors and colleagues I've had throughout, you know, immediately starting after I left Ithaca. So, like in my grad school years at Westminster Choir College, at different things I've auditioned for, even to this day, auditions I've done in Germany as a mezzo just a few months ago. There's always been a little bit of a question about that. And I happen to be studying with a brilliant teacher right now whose name rhymes. I'm
Stop
not
it.
going to drop names, but it rhymes with blessed and blurt. And and
Ridiculous.
we are sort of working together to ease up the tension. And what we're finding as we do that is a real sort of definitive sort of sopranic sound. But I think to play it safe over the years, and ensure. I think that the mentality of different teachers I have was to protect, and so they were very careful. Knowing that I had sort of young singers tension in the voice and not wanting to have the tessitura be too high that you have a higher chance of damage, you know what I mean? So I think it was with the best of intentions. And I think that as time has passed and my voice has developed, it's starting to become more apparent that we're moving out of that area.
Well,
So
and
it's,
and there are so many different types of sopranos, right? So
of course,
not
yeah.
always, does one emerge being the Cunegonda, Queen of the Night type of soprano,
Yeah.
which,
No,
quite
right.
frankly, even in their youth, that's sort of an obvious thing, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so for a full lyric soprano, it is sort of trickier to, I don't know, label that, if you will,
Sure.
early on. And so, yeah, it's
Right,
kind of nice that you did experience that sort of caution and you know carefulness with your from your teachers.
right,
But yeah, it's been great sort of discovering that with you.
right. Yeah,
Just
I
for
agree.
our viewers, you and I met because we are both alumni of Opera in the Ozarks, right? Out
Shout
of Eureka
out.
Spring, Arkansas. Shout out Eureka Springs.
Hashtag, hashtag,
Um,
hashtag.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they put us together on a alumni recital about three
Yes,
years ago. And
exactly.
so, how fun was that? Right? That
It
was
was
great.
so fun. I did the Wiesendank and what'd you sing? The Dichte Liebe.
I sang the Dixie Lima. Yeah, that was a
That's
lot of
right.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Crushed
Um,
it.
so you mentioned Westminster Choir College. Talk about that
Yes.
experience. How was that? I mean, I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people assume, oh, choir college, you're going there to learn how to be a professional chorister. I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah.
people's opinions are. I recently mentioned it. Actually, now one of my best friends in the whole world, Brian
Right.
Email, is
Right.
a voice teacher there, and
Yes.
I recently worked with a tenor in London when I was singing in London. He was
Mm.
from Finland, and he came down. He was doing his undergraduate in Scotland, and he came
Mhm.
over to London to have some lessons with me. And I encouraged him to maybe think of Westminster for graduate school because I think
Yeah.
he and Brian would be a great fit. But of course, his immediate thought was, "Oh, why would I want to go to a choir college if I want to be a professional opera singer?" Talk a little bit
Right.
about your experience there.
Right. In my quest for grad school, so basically, after I got my degree in environmental studies, I almost immediately knew that's not what I wanted to do with my time. And so, with the help of a lot of friends and encouragement of my voice teacher, Mark Webster, I applied to different places. I ultimately decided on Westminster Choir College. I think for me, I kind of just felt like I had so many skills based musical gaps, right? Like sight singing and sight reading and certain languages. And I've always been a fan of learning languages. So I was a little familiar. IPA is not something I knew. I had never really taken a theory course. And so for me, which you can imagine rolling into grad school for your placement exams and you're like, sol, do, you know what I mean? And so it was
Yeah,
a
that is
huge learning
surprising.
curve. Yes.
I would
And so
imagine.
it was very stressful, Weston. We did make up for lost time, but it was a feat. And so that all this to say that I think I chose it because I thought to myself, this would be a really number one. I went for you choose the teacher is how you choose grad school. So I went to study with Sharon Sweet there. And then also, I kind of just felt like the environment there would really fill in a lot of the musical gaps that I sort of had as someone who was a different major. And so, and that ended up being true. That ended up being true for sure. It's a really, I mean, between the theory and the history and the languages, I mean, it really is. It's an excellent education, and I got to sing in also my main roles in like 3 or 4 operas there. So it was a really good opportunity for me, who was like sort of just kicking into it.
Hmm.
No,
And
so
secured your passion for continuing afterwards to pursue
yes.
a career as a singer, yeah?
Absolutely. Yes. And made me feel sort of more legitimate in my own eyes and less like an imposter that I too am a singer. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about you graduate from Westminster and then what happens?
Okay. So after Westminster, I think that's right after that is when I did opera in the Ozarks. And
Okay.
I just started doing a series of, I got a church job in Princeton. I moved there for a little bit. I've had several over the years. I lived
Where
there
did
for a
where
few
did you have a
years.
church job? I had a church job in Princeton.
I've had a couple. So the first one was at First Church of Christ Scientist, a Christian church there,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
for their soloist services. I've also sung with All Saints Episcopal with Kevin O'Malley in Princeton, obviously. And I also sang during grad school at a Catholic church out there, Immaculate Conception in Spotswood with Philip Stefani, another shout out. So I had a series of different sort of liturgical gigs there, and as well, I was just taking different operatic programs, right? Chicago Summer Opera was a little bit after that. Opera in the Ozarks. I did the cooperative program at Ryder,
Oh
which
yeah,
was
which is still
yes,
going.
yes, absolutely going strong. And so that's kind of what I did after that. I kind of knew I had a sense at the time that while albeit having, an education and albeit having what you might call a nice instrument, I still didn't feel like things were totally settled technically. And so I
Hmm.
sort of shied away from major auditions and applications and things like that. And I figured, you know what, let it cook a little bit, continue taking lessons, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, and then right after that, I got a job at DeSales University teaching the voice lessons there. I was an adjunct voice faculty there.
Oh wow.
Yep. And I
Had you
taught,
taught before that?
no, I didn't. And so that was a whole,
That's a learning curve.
that was a learning curve. I know. Sometimes I wish I could just go back and take everything I've learned in the years I've been there and go back to that first semester and be like, let me do it again. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I think that's true for everybody. But yeah, so then, the teaching picked up and I had jobs in private studios and I was teaching at DeSales. I taught there about 5 years.
Where's the sales?
Um, DeSales is in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So I was commuting a few
Got it.
days a week for the lessons, right? And then the pandemic, and sort of like in that time, teaching filled a lot of my schedule. And again, that part of me that loves stability and was a little unsure still about where I fit and everything, really appreciated those opportunities to do that. And because you learn a lot about yourself teaching, you learn a lot about your own singing when you have to explain it again and again and again and again, you know? And so, yeah, so I teaching kind of took the center stage for a while. I did some competitions. In 2019, I won the Met Districts in South Carolina.
Nice.
I've won the American Prize in a couple of categories. But again, I wasn't really interested in taking sort of like auditions, like full applying for, young artists.
Just dabbling
Just a
in
dibble
the
dabble,
competition
student
circuit.
doodle. Yes, exactly. And then, of course, we all know in 2019 through 2021, pandemic hit, right? I did get to keep my teaching jobs online during that time, which I was grateful for with the
Well, that's
sales.
nice.
Yep. And I just started taking small regional roles, right? Like sometimes it would be like a chorus position with like the Princeton Festival. Sometimes it would be like more recently, like Opera Raylan, more in New Hampshire, Saltmarsh Opera, just taking little small roles like your Tisbys, your Marcellinas, a witch here and there from Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, sort of different things like that.
I mean, I
Hmm.
love how you say it so nonchalantly, but I mean, like, I think that's what everyone's trying to do, right? So,
Right,
like, how did you
right.
even like pursue those things? Were these just like you had a membership to Yap Tracker and you just applied for everything you saw, or like what happened?
Actually, a lot of these were word of mouth. I tend to really work like that. Sometimes it was, my agent recommending me for things and getting me auditions. Sometimes it was just me hearing from friends. Sometimes it was me seeing Facebook posts and answering them. Sometimes it was Yap Tracker. It sort of depends on the situation, but it's kind of just like a little slurry from all over. But I do tend to hear about most of my things from word of mouth, where someone's like, "Hey, would you like to do this?"
Well, it's so
Okay,
important
yeah,
to have a network web that stretches far
right.
and wide so that you have all of those different sort of people kind of working on unknowingly working on your behalf, because
I know, right?
if you stay in touch and you start talking and it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, hey, by the way, what do you think about that?" So yeah, that is
right,
definitely an important part of this whole thing.
right.
Um,
Hmm.
okay, so then you're gigging around, you're
Gigging around.
full time in teaching. You come out of the
Yes,
pandemic. Talk about
yes.
that.
Coming out of the pandemic was a reprieve and also a little bit of a horror because I think like it was right over those years. It was like a 29, 30, 31, right when I like wanted to sort of be reaching for more things
Hmm.
that kind of came in. And so that was certainly, discouraging, but it was for everybody. I mean,
Well, yeah.
people
I
had
mean,
much worse than I
I
did.
think a
Yeah.
lot of young artists, young
Yeah.
singers that sort of are hoping to get to that next, whatever that may be,
Yeah.
felt like the pandemic really like halted their progress and kind of got in the way of, you know what I mean? Like the
Absolutely.
momentum just kind of stopped.
And then even for the year after, I mean, people were honoring back contracts. That's a whole other year, you know?
Right, right.
And so yeah, so shortly after that, I moved to New Jersey to get an apartment to be closer to the city for auditions. And that was expensive. I would I
Well,
wouldn't
and
say.
somewhere along the way you got married, right? When did you get married?
Yes, yes, yes. Nikolai and I got married in February 22nd of 2022, so we'll always remember the anniversary date as
That's a
two
lot
two
of
two two two
twos.
two.
Yep.
It's a lot of twos. And he got a job at Tesla, so which was in Paramus outside of the city. So we moved there, and I was there for auditions. I got another local teaching gig there, which I even if I love teaching little kids, I and I loved the people I work for. Shout out to Betsy Nana. It's certainly I think I always knew, although I loved it and it was rewarding, it's not my calling, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Oh, sure.
And
Sure.
I've always known that. I've always known that. Yeah. And so in the 2 years in New Jersey, I was busy, busy, busy juggling anywhere, 30 to 60-minute lessons for in two states for between 43 and 48 students at any given time.
Oh my God.
Yes, and a church job and gigging, and trying to like balance all that and then still sing at Carnegie Hall well and like you know what I mean.
Wait a minute.
So
Still sing at
yes,
Carnegie Hall well. What do you mean?
yes. Last year I had my
Just
very
is that
first.
you just go down and rent the hall for the night
You
and
just rent it.
sing,
You just
do some
rent it, Weston. You
vocalizing?
don't. Talk to Marty in the back. No, that a lot of the so I should say among all of the teaching, even though I haven't been auditioning for sort of bigger programs or applying to them,
Right.
I have done quite a few like orchestral gigs and sort of symphonic gigs, which have
Okay.
been, I sang like the Brahms Alto Rhapsody at Moravian College as a guest soloist. And I sang a couple that I can't even recall. But one was last March, I made my Carnegie Hall soloist debut singing just a really tiny little, it really was very small, but
Oh, come on. Don't
it was a,
downplay
no,
that.
no.
That's a pretty great thing to sing at Carnegie Hall. Oh, was
Yeah.
this through like Musical America or or no,
Yes.
wait,
Mid
was it
America
Mid
Productions.
America? I
Yes,
knew it was something.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I did
Yeah.
one of those gigs back in the
Yeah.
day.
Do you remember
Yeah.
what you sang?
Yeah, I did the Haydn Paukenmesse
Oh,
on the
banger.
first half because, and the reason I
Hmm.
remember that was because it was with my alma mater. So my choir
Yeah.
director from Southwestern University, Kenny
Hmm.
Shepard, had brought his choir. And they usually do a few other. There's two or three other choirs that get
Yes.
combined on those deals. But he had chosen, or I don't know if he chose. I don't know how it all worked out, but
Yeah.
somehow I ended up singing with them, and we did the Haydn Paukenmesse, and then I think on the other half we did the maybe it was the Fauré Requiem or something,
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
because
You're the
neither of those are
Washington
too
Stern.
too long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, well.
So what
Yeah,
did you
and that was,
do?
um I can't remember the name of it, which is
Oh, good,
embarrassing.
good. That's great.
Moving on, moving on. I'm sure it's
Well, one of
fine.
the things I was going to ask you about is like, okay, up until now, when you look back on those experiences, you mentioned you wish you could go back to the first day of grad school and do it all over again. But what are some
Yes.
of the pitfalls? Like, what are some of the missteps? What are some of the things that you go, why did I think that that would be a good idea? What was I doing through that, let's say, graduate school and
Hmm.
getting out and trying to make your way? Looking back on those days, what are some of the things that you sort of now look back on and wish you could have done differently?
I think there are realizations that come to everybody with age. And I think I say as a wise old sage sitting before you today. And I think some of the biggest ones for me were I wish in my singing early on, it hadn't been so important to me to be externally validated. I wish that from the
This
get
quickly
go,
turned into a therapy session. I mean, oh my God, have you met
most
any
encounters
singer in
with
the
me do,
world?
Weston. This is, yeah. I wish that I had just, I know this is glib and cliche, but I wish I had truly just trusted the process more. I wish I didn't fight against myself so much. And I wish that I had sort of been open or sought out, more opinions and more, as much training as I could. I think I let a lot of, fear, if I'm being honest, I think I let fear get in my way too much as far
Hmm.
as like not applying to things or not moving on from teachers or colleagues that were no longer serving me, not questioning, different vocal things that were going on more. I just wish
Hmm.
that I had a little bit in different ways showed up for myself a little bit more than I had. Not to say that I regret it, not to say that I didn't learn, not to say that I haven't had some success, right?
Hmm.
But I think just as an artist, not even for my career, I mean just as an artist, I wish I'd accepted the fear and moved past it more than I did. Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, do you mind me asking how old you are now?
111.
No.
No.
Hey, my grandma's 104. She's still around.
Amazing. No, I'm 33. So,
30. Okay, so 30.
yeah.
You know, so 33 in my mind is,
Hmm.
there are people who sort of find their way into the pipeline and come out on the other side as
Hmm.
young artist royalty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Those
Sure.
those individuals who somehow by the age of 33 have just finished or a few years ago had finished the Ryan Opera Center at Lyric Opera of Chicago or the Houston Grand Opera Studio or the LA
Okay.
Opera Studio or the W&O Studio or the Linneman program at the Matter, or one of
Right.
those major house programs, which really sets you up for success with not only
Right.
with management, but those houses are so loyal to those artists, they bring them back, and
Right.
you try out a role in your house, your home company, and then one of the other ones on the same tier, oh, we'd like you to come do that here, and all of a sudden
Yes.
it's already spinning.
Right.
Even those folks who I came up with a lot of those people, it, it takes a second to realize or to even self-identify as an artist. And you
Yes.
mention it at your age now, having not gone through those, because I think a lot of those
Yeah.
bigger programs instill in you this idea of who you need to be and what you are, and you're
Right.
surrounded by it on a daily basis. So it's I
Right.
think in some ways it's easier to be confident in that realm. So how did you, I mean, you throw out the word artist, and it's like, where did
Right.
you find that in your mind? What is the difference between a singer and an artist? And
Hmm.
how do you sort of go about your daily life now as an artist? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just kind of want to get
Yes.
into that a little bit.
Yeah. At the risk of sounding a little too caveman about it, I would say that artists make me feel good and everything else sort of
Artist,
stresses
feel
me out.
good.
Art is good. Yeah, I think my metric for what is art and what is not is like it's so, and this is so, I know this is about to be, but it's very, I just feel like it's a state of mind. I just feel like it's a state of being. I think it's whether you call it being present, vulnerable, authentic, right-brained, open, reactive, spontaneous, whatever you want to call it. Every time that I step outside of my calendar and my bills and chores and cleaning, and I allow myself to be in that space, I go from a stressed mess to just the happiest of clams, right? And I think when I try to sing in a way that is not fully open and present and authentic and open and is controlled, which is something I'm super guilty of historically, not only does it not sound great, it definitely doesn't feel good. And you almost can feel it in your heart. You can feel it when you are really singing well. And I don't even just mean producing sound, I mean existing in that moment and channeling it. It's like I feel like just like this glow in my heart, which I know is, And so I think when I was younger, I thought that was less important than it was. And as I've moved out of my 20s, which is
Well,
like,
wait,
what am I going to
you
be?
thought it
Yeah.
was less important. Did you even know the ingredients that can, or I mean, now if we break that down, what are the
Yeah.
ingredients in that recipe to allow yourself to be vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera. And I think
Yes.
that in itself is such
Hmm.
a huge awakening when you
Hmm.
discover the importance of not just memorizing syllables that are linked together in a foreign
Sure.
language,
Yeah.
but truly
Right.
understand the meaning behind those words. And,
Right.
so many teachers of mine have taught the importance of, translating not only word for word, but phrase by
Hmm.
phrase. And
Right.
then what I encourage all of my students to do is go a step further and do a 2025 colloquial translation of how
Right.
you would say it to your best friend, right? So that you
Right.
truly inhabit the words that make up the story that we're
Yes.
telling on stage, right? I mean, I
And
think that's a
yes.
part of it. It doesn't really get
Yes.
into the music, but you know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's like what
Yeah.
are those ingredients in your recipe?
I think just I think having the courage to make big changes and move across the pond on a whim, I think I really feel like a day is a success when I can approach it from a place of I accept myself. I'm happy to do this. There are no expectations about an outcome. There's no expectations of I
That's a
have to do this.
that's a huge one.
Yes. And I feel like artists are people who content themselves to live in the process, whether that's of how you live and how you approach your day, whether it's how you're approaching being in a moment as a character or create or moving air through vowel spaces. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if I have moved myself to that place consistently every single day, that is a successful day because I am an artist. And when I can express from a place like that, I mean, really, as much as I've tried to ignore it for sensible reasons, there is nothing that makes me happier than that or feel more like me.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. Initially I thought this was going to be a two-parter, but we're clicking right along. And you just
Click,
mentioned that
click,
you
click,
had the
click.
courage to fly across the pond, moving all your stuff. How did
Yeah.
that, so let's just get into it.
Okay.
How did you get inspired to pack up all your stuff and to move to Germany?
Well, great question, Winston. I was I was 33, and as I said, which is this just a few months ago, last spring, I always wanted to live in Europe since I was 17. And I knew because I had gone a couple of times. Once I did the Si Parla Si Canta program when I was younger. Another time, I just went with a class trip with our English class in high school. And I really loved it. I love novelty. I love foreign languages. I love puzzles and figuring things out. And every time I travel abroad, it kind of feels like that, right? So I think I just hit a point where I was so busy. I mean, and in some ways blessed to have so many students, but I was so busy teaching and paying bills and doing the New Jersey grind and paying for an apartment that was way out of our price range and trying to balance everything and gigging. I actually, funnily enough, I got laryngitis on the day before my Carnegie Hall debut. I woke up with actual, honest to God, not like panicking nerves. I had like laryngitis, right? Which turned out to be like a stress thing and tension because I was teaching so much. I just nonstop talking for weeks and weeks and weeks constantly, right? And I really feel I pulled it together for the performance, but it was very scary. It was a lot of broth. And then after that, something just kind of,
I just got that.
there's a lot of broth and resting.
Oh
After
God.
that, something clicked where I was like, I really just need to prioritize this because you know what? I know it's scary. I know whatever, but like, I have to stop doing this rat race. I need to focus on this. I need to put myself in an environment where I would be able to focus on it financially, schedule wise, space from all the other distractions in my life. I just need a place where I can go and just do this and just be this. And so in classic in classic Alyce fashion, I did quit all of my jobs in one fell swoop. I went home for a month or two to I sold my car. And not to say I did this by myself. I mean, family members helped me out financially when I told them. And I just said, like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go. I'm going to try. Again, I'm a little bit chaotic. You do not need to be as chaotic as I am. You can use some strategy, but that's how I did it. And in August, my husband and I got on a plane and we flew to Mannheim and we got a place for 2 months and I started applying for auditions and it just so happened that it worked out. And about 89 days of my 90-day stay here that I can legally be here, visiting, I was offered a job and that's in Ulm and that's where I am now with Theater Ulm. So yeah.
Talk
So
a little bit about the 90-day thing. I'm not sure everybody knows about that.
Sure. As a United States citizen, and it's also true for other countries too, you legally are allowed to be in not just Germany, but what is called the Schengen area, which is basically the EU. So you're France, Switzerland, Austria, and a lot of others too. Not the UK, not Croatia, and a couple others not. But you are allowed to stay there for 90 of 180 calendar days. They do not need to be consecutive, but it's easier to calculate if you do. And you are allowed to be there visa free. It's called it's basically like a tourist visa.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to work there during that time. If you decide to work there, you do have to get a work visa. You have to be accepted, things like that, which is a process. But anyone, and that's true for that's true for anybody. If you want to go to Europe, you can be there 90 days before you have to figure something out or go back home. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you were there
Yeah.
initially where?
Mannheim.
So you flew to Mannheim
We
from
flew to Frankfurt and then we rented a car and actually took a little trip down to Switzerland to see some friends. But then we went to Mannheim.
this is
Yeah.
you and your husband both went over
Yes, that's
there.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was in Mannheim? Or why Mannheim?
I think we chose it it's kind of like, to us, it felt like a central location. You really like right up and down the pipeline. You've got a lot of theaters you've got like Frankfurt, Mannheim, you've got Stuttgart right there. Munich is not too far off. And then in the middle, it feels like there's maybe not so many in Germany. And then there's like in the north, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had just sort of, because we flew into Frankfurt and Mannheim was affordable to live in, and you can get most places. You can get
And
anywhere.
I mean, were you Airbnb-ing it or how did?
Yes, we Airbnb'd it. Yes.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay,
Yeah.
all
Hmm.
right. And so you're in Mannheim, and what you just start singing out the window, hoping somebody will come, or what do you do?
Yes, and nobody's complained. So that was a good omen. But yeah, I had a lot of help when I came here as far as American friends who have come here and done this before. At this point in the program, I would like to give a huge thanks to Alyssa and Daniel Foltz Morrison and also Katie Lippau for just I mean, I showed up in a flurry. I showed up in a flurry, not really a plan. I knew I wanted to do it. I didn't know where to look, and they gave me constant advice about here's where you audition, here's where you send things. You go to this website, you look for these things. These are the arias they're going to ask you to sing if you do this voice part. This is where we think you should. You know what I mean? They were absolutely indispensable and so important to me this process. So, there are different websites you can go on, like bunenjobs.de, which is stage jobs, where it's sort of like if you're looking for chorus jobs, they're all listed there. If you're a tech person or a dancer, they're all listed there as well. I also looked up agents around the time, and I auditioned for a few agents that went pretty well. They were in Berlin. And then it was a lot of Googling and taking advice. I also auditioned for one of the offices of the ZAV, which is like it's like a federal central office whose job it is to help foreigners and specialized workers find jobs and placement in Germany. So I did, again, much like the roles I've got, it was really like it was a lot of friends. It was a lot of word of mouth that super helped me figure out what I was doing, and a lot of
Wow.
Googling.
Wow.
And beer.
So, and
Right. Yeah.
great.
Half a
Uh,
Weizen. Yeah.
so you're in Mannheim, you're auditioning
Hmm.
for all these different things.
Yeah.
Um, how did that process go?
Okay. We talked a little bit about something you would do differently if you could go back earlier.
Yeah.
I think what I would have done instead of sort of fly to Germany on a whim is I would have checked and not gone to Germany in the middle of the national vacation time of the month of August, beginning of September, because you have 90 days to figure it out. And I sort of flew in, immediately sent a bunch of emails. I didn't hear back for weeks. And I was like, what? I mean, I didn't even hear no's. I heard nothing. And these are from offices, boutique agencies. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like what's going on? And then my friends were like, well, everybody's on vacation till, September 15th. And so I lost like 3 weeks of planning time in that time. So that's something I would have done. So little word of truth here. Germany is on vacation in August, a couple weeks before, a couple weeks after. Do not go at that time expecting to be able to contact a lot of people. Nobody is going to pick up their phone. Okay.
Wow.
So, but yeah. And so what was the question?
How did that process of pursuing these auditions that you were
Yeah.
finding through your network of friends, but also
Yes.
the what did you call it? The Bühnen
Oh,
something.
Bühnenjobs.de, stage jobs, and then also like .de. And
Right.
then
Bühnen, just for people who are looking,
yes,
B-U umlaut H-N-E-N
that's correct.
J-O-B-S.
Jobs.de. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
Bühnenjobs.de. Yeah. So they have everything listed. I applied to most of mine from there.
I mean, is that like
Although
Yap Tracker or no?
it is, but it's not for young artists, it's for everybody.
Oh,
It's kind
okay.
of
Okay.
like, yeah.
Solo positions as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, not as many. Sometimes they'll ask for a soloist, but it's really mostly for like chorus singers, dancers, things like that.
Oh, okay.
Which I at this point in my life wanted. I wanted when you get a chorus contract, whether you're doing a maternity leave replacement, which is what I'm doing, or you have a fest contract, it's a real degree of stability. And I knew that in order to just be here and figure out my voice and make a plan and give myself space, I knew I'd need time to do that. And so that's one of the beauties of singing in the chorus is like you have extreme stability, you have a visa that lasts a long time. You're not just like doing a gig for a month and then hopefully you find one and then I need a visa, I need a reason to stay. It's very settled, right? So yeah, so the process of doing that was it's basically you just send an email. You send an email, you put 2 samples of singing, you put your resume, and you write it in German, obviously. And that's pretty much it. It is not a complex audition process for jobs
Are
like these.
there, in
Yeah.
America, there's sort of an
Mhm.
agreed upon, like, your
Right.
resume should look like this, in 2025. Now,
Hmm.
a young artist resume looks different than a press kit that a professional soloist would offer,
Sure.
uh, whether auditioning for management or what their manager puts together, when they
Right.
audition for a company. In
Sure.
Germany, are there any websites that you know of, or how did you learn to do your resume
Yeah.
in that format that would be, the sort of common?
Again, it was friends. The lifeblood. Yeah, and so it does have to be in German. The German companies, and more importantly, sort of like the German government, who is the people who run the theaters here. You know, they're not sort of selbstständig on their own things. They're run by the government, right? They're very interested in not only the roles you've sung, they want to know everything. They want to, it's more like a CV than a resume,
Uh-huh.
right? They want to know your Ausbildung, so all of the programs you've done. They want to know, you know, your GPA and which degrees you
Really?
have and what, yeah, because it's a very thorough picture. And I put everything in there. I put times I was section leaders in choruses. I put when I was just in normal opera courses. I put when I was soloist. I put when I was concert soloist. I put training programs, just everything I've done and put it all out there. And I sort of got that format. It's very similar to the US format. It can be more than one page though. It doesn't have to be like that. It has to be one page.
Right,
It
right,
can be
right.
more detailed. You can put more
Okay.
in there. Yeah. Hmm.
So you auditioned for Ulm while you're in Mannheim?
Yes. So out of Mannheim, I took several trips to different areas. And Ulm was actually just my second audition. And then I was offered the contract, so I took it. Yeah. And so
Fantastic.
some of the other ones I didn't have to go to, and I didn't, so, and the reason I took it is not just because I wanted so much to stay in Germany and continue this process for myself. When you go to an audition and you're just like, I stepped off the train and I got an immediate good feeling. I just like the day of the audition, which was hilarious because a short side story, the day before this audition, I did take a 14-hour train ride with 8 transfers from Berlin because I was in Berlin at the time. I didn't get there. But I fell asleep on the train and woke up in the Czech Republic. Panicking because no one was speaking German and my app didn't work, whatever. So all this to say, despite the perils of the day before and navigating their 14 hours in trains through 2 countries accidentally, I just immediately just had a warm feeling the second I walked into specifically that theater. And I hadn't got that in like some of my other auditions and that has remained true to this day. And so I think I just felt very comfortable right away. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you why. Right. And then as a result, I think I had a really, really strong audition. Even I afterwards was like, good work, Alyce. That was a good one. And then a few days later, I was offered the job. So it's just, I
Wow.
left with a warm, fuzzy feeling. And I think that was a real sign for me that I was like, you know what? I'm not going to take these others. Like, I'm going to do this one. It just felt right. And so I did it.
Did any of the auditions that you do, were you doing only chorus auditions or because of the stability, or were you also,
Exactly.
did you do any fest auditions or any other,
Nope.
like,
I only auditioned for agents or for choruses. Yep.
okay, okay.
Because if you want a fest contract somewhere, I mean, it is like 97%. You really should have an agent representing you because they have so much power in
Mm,
that whole process. And
mm.
they're much, much more in the know than you sitting there individually Googling every theater. There's like 83 theaters in Germany. You're going to Google every one and
Wow.
see who's like, you know what I mean? So to have an agent, in my opinion, especially as a newbie and all these things, I felt like was a better avenue to take.
Sure.
I asked the fest singers at the theater I work at now, who I've asked about this, agree. They said absolutely, it's really, really important to get representation. Yeah, as soon as you
So
can.
you've thrown out a lot of, very nonchalantly, thrown out a lot of German words to describe different,
Sure.
categories on a resume, etc.
Yeah.
Did you know German before flying over to Germany? Or I mean, obviously you must. That's a stupid question. Of course you probably
Well,
did.
I mean, all right. If you count
And
the
well,
four
and more
years, yeah.
importantly, how important is it that one is somewhat conversational
Hmm.
in German before
Hmm.
going to Germany?
Okay. Okay, the first question, I think that so if you're counting the 4 years at Northampton Area Senior High School in Pennsylvania that I took German classes, that and then 2 semesters in college and then singing Schubert, right? In lessons. Like that's it,
That's
right?
your extent of German study.
That's the extent of the study, right?
Okay.
And then yeah, so it is really, really important to know German. Now, let me preface this by saying, depending on where you are in Germany, like if you are in Berlin, I am not kidding. Everyone speaks English, like fluently. I'm telling you, not as a generalization. And like, I think their pets even speak English. Like you, as an Auslander or a foreigner, you're not going to have a tough time if you speak English. Everybody speaks it, right? Now, in a smaller town in the south of Germany where I'm at now, you're looking at like, instead of 100% of people speaking really proficient English, it's 60, 55, a little bit less. And sort of the smaller town you go, the less and less because you're not exposed to it as much. So
Hmm.
why would you practice it ever? You know?
Right, right, right.
And so depending on where you're going is important. Theaters here are so full of international artists and people who are so uber educated in different languages and different styles that, for example, like my boss here, you know, he's obviously German, Herr Hensler, but I mean, his English is beautiful. Like when I am in rehearsal and I really don't understand something, I can ask him and there's no shame. He'll just be like, it
So
means this.
in staging
Yes.
rehearsals or in music rehearsals, all of that is done in German.
Yes,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
mean, maybe
Yes.
that's a silly question,
No, no,
but it's
no,
like,
no, no, no,
you know,
no. Yeah.
in different countries, you know, I mean, heck, even in America, in large
Yeah.
international theaters, they'll sort of ask the cast, you know, what language should we do this in? Italian or German or, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I guess on one hand, you need to be able to be proficient enough to get through a rehearsal and understand what they're asking you to do.
Right. A lot of the other things, like my contract was in German, all of my apartment contracts have been in German, and they've not necessarily spoken English. I mean, that's easy because you can Google Translate a document, right? That's just, you
Sure.
know, technology. Um, in rehearsal, yes, it's 100% in German. That doesn't mean they wouldn't, again, tell you if you really didn't understand. But if I'm being honest, a lot of times I think it's the nature of music. There's so much modeling and there's so much just like Körpersprache. There's so much like body language and context that if you've sat through musical rehearsals in the United States, you kind of get what they're going for just by
Right.
the way they move their hands. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
You
Right.
kind of
Right.
get it. And right? And so eventually the word for that clicks in. So it is in a musical setting, it's great because it's something you're already familiar with and there's a lot of that going on. I think doing other things like applying for a visa is extremely stressful if you don't have a strong English speaker.
So how does
Yeah.
that work? Do you have to get a visa before you arrive in the city? Or wait, you said that you got the job, you got the audition, you did the audition, you got hired, you didn't have a visa, you were still working on those 90 days that you were, right?
Okay, here's what happened. Are you ready? I have a lot of insight for any singers interested in about the visa process. And the best thing you can do is give yourself time. So, which I didn't have. So, here's what happened. Mid-November, I get a job offer, right? I am at day 89 of 90 and but I had done something tricky. So, I knew that even if I hadn't a job lined up, I knew that I wanted to stay. And so I started as soon as I landed in Germany, I started looking for ways to do that. And one thing you can do is get a Freiberufler Visum. So you can get a free worker, a freelance visa. Thank you, says to myself. You can get a freelance visa, which allows you to stay in Germany legally for a time that is determined with you and your worker, the caseworker in the Ausländerbehörde, the immigrant's office of wherever you're living, wherever you're registered to live. And in doing so, you have a certain amount of time to find work. Now, there are rules, like you can't take other jobs, right? I had applied for one in Berlin because I knew as an artist city, it was likely going to be a lot easier for me to be approved for that because it's something that's done a lot more there. Okay.
Hmm.
So I had technically 2 weeks before I got the job offer or even had the audition, I had gotten word from the embassy saying, you may stay here. However, because we have so many people to see, we can't even have your meeting to have the visa, right? I sent in my application. They're like, we can't even have that meeting for the visa until February 19th. So I was living in a weird gray zone where I'm past my tourist days, right? I don't have a visa, but I'm in this weird nebulous gray waiting area. That's this time lag. Now, in that time, you are allowed to stay there, but you can't leave because how would you get back in? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I was there in a weird gray area. And then I had the audition. And then I got the job offer. And then the thing is, on a Thursday invited me and they said, can you be here Monday? So I was like, yeah, no problem, whatever. I didn't
You're
know
like, I can
anything
pack
about.
up my stuff and move there.
Oh, and I did. I did. I got an Audi down the Autobahn. I rented it from Enterprise. I know. I lucked out. I asked for Volkswagen. I got an Audi. But so I packed up everything. I was there by Saturday morning for rehearsal. I left Thursday. I had it all done. I had found an apartment. I moved in. I like did it, right? And then I go to a few days of rehearsal. I'm like, la-ti-da, this is the best. I was scared, but it was amazing. Monday comes. I go to the office and I register my Anmeldung, my registration for where I live. And then I go to apply for a visa and they're like, come back in 2 weeks and inquire again. And I was like, first of all, I don't know why. Maybe because I've never worked in a foreign country. But I just thought a visa was something that was so easy to come by, which was was such a stupid, like, it's like it takes so much time for the bureaucracy. So like I was in a unique circumstance where I had like 48 hours notice, right? Normally, if you're auditioning in Germany, you're auditioning for something that's not till next season. You have plenty of time to apply for a visa in your home country, which would be their preference, or if you weirdly worked it out with 90 days in your own schedule or whatever, right? I was in the weird nether zone. And flash forward a month and a half later, I still didn't have a visa. And so all that time I wasn't allowed to go to work. So those 2 days that I had there of magic were like, and I didn't
Right.
know. And so as
Right.
soon as I found out, I left. And so it was a weird time because here I am for a month and a half in the south of Germany by myself, like trying to go to these rehearsals, but I can't. And so I'm like going and observing the shows like this, like trying to be a part of it, right?
My
And
God.
so, long story short, today, January what?
15th?
January 15th, I have my official okay from the federal agency to work here in Germany, but I started trying to get it November 25th.
Wow.
And so this is just a word of caution for anyone wanting to work here. If you can give yourself time, oh my God, do it. My
Wait,
God,
so
do it.
wait, but
Yeah.
you said November 25th is when you applied in Berlin?
No, I had already I was in the waiting for the freelance visa. November 25th, I had already moved to Ulm. That was the official first day of my contract. It was a Monday. I
Oh,
went
but
on
then you went and
Saturday.
applied in Ulm. And
Yes, I
it
went
took
to
you
apply
from
in
the, oh,
Ulm.
okay. Wow.
Yes, yeah. They had to transfer the documents. It is like, I know it's cliche again, like obviously bureaucracy is not the zippiest answer we have to these problems, but it's the one we have. And
Right.
so give yourself time as much
So
as you can.
a couple of more questions before we wrap. But
Yeah,
so first of all, what where would you like to see yourself in a year from now, or maybe 1 year and then 3 years?
sure. In 1 year, I would like to have just an excellent, excellent mastery of my voice and artistry, which I think is a forever goal. So it's not really fair to say that it'll be like
Yeah,
fair in a year. Right.
I haven't figured it out yet. I just turned
Yes.
50. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
always in the process of discovery, I think, on that.
Right. I want to figure out what my soprano rep is, because that's very new to me. I want to, in a year, I want to have sung for some more agents. I would like to have some agents interested in me eventually,
Sure.
because what I'd like to do eventually is move to like a fest contract in a house, and then
Yeah.
maybe one day eventually like a guest artist.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And
Well,
so
there's a lot of stability, almost like a normal job in both a full-time chorister as well as a fest in an ensemble at a theater.
absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
question that I have, and I don't know if you feel uncomfortable, don't answer this question, but I think a lot of people
yeah.
are curious, what does a full-time chorus position pay?
Okay, so it depends on the house. So Germany has like the ABC houses, right?
And those are based on how much money the federal government gives them?
Yeah, it's like the size
Or
of population of the city it's in. But A houses are usually funded by like Staatstheaters are like more like funded by the state, whereas like which is hilarious, Stadt without the S theater, which is what I'm in, is a city theater. and a lot of bee houses are there, and they're sort of run by the city. So it has to do with population, it has to do with how old the theater is, it has to do with almost entirely with levels of funding, right, from the government, and where the funding's coming from. In a house, you're looking at like top international artists as guests. You're looking at like choruses of like 120 people. You're looking at
Mhm.
huge orchestras, a
This would
lot
be
of
something like the
volunteering.
Berlin Staatsoper or like
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bayerische Staatsoper in Munich or
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. So that's like an A house. Teatro Ulm is a bay house, is a B house. So that's more, it's run by the city, so I am a city employee. And what's cool about it is that because the chorus here is about it's about 50 people, right? Instead of bringing in young artists, they almost a lot of the time, and this has been true for the season I've been here so far, they hire from within the chorus to do featured ensemble parts,
oh
to
wow.
do yes, exactly. And I was asked to do one the other day. So coming up, I'll be singing a little featured ensemble part that if I were in a bigger house, you make more money in a bigger house, sure. But you don't necessarily fill your resume in exactly the same way. So what I really appreciate about this B house is that there are certainly opportunities where like they might bring you in to sing arias of your choice in a concert, which you wouldn't as a chorister, right? You get featured ensemble parts. You're pulled into the smaller roles, anything the fest people are not covering. So yeah. What was the question? Cannot focus.
I think you answered. Oh no, my other question
Yeah.
was how
Yeah.
much does it actually pay?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, as a full-time
And
chorister,
how does that
yes.
compare with, because the number alone might be whatever, but how does it
Yeah.
compare to like living expenses and normal life in that city? You know what I mean?
Yes. So, actually, your rate of pay is based on what is on your CV. So, if you are someone who has certain things like a master's, or you have like different, you have a Stimmbühne, which is like your last course job, how much were you paid? They really like it's like very particular to each person, but I
Mm.
will say there are categories. So I net about 3,500 euros a month, and would no, I gross 3,500 euros a month. I net about 29, all said and done with taxes, 2,900, which doesn't sound like a lot until you
Well, but
take into
it's, I mean, it's, let's
yeah,
put it this way. I mean,
yeah,
think about the chorus positions in America. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, you have a huge house like the Metropolitan Opera, where
right,
the full-time choristers there get paid a very good salary,
yeah,
and San Francisco Opera. But
right,
like even Lyric Opera of Chicago, it's not. Well, you're talking about a 12-month salary. You talk about
right,
a living wage. My point is, there's only maybe three houses in the entire country here
right.
that offer that because all the other companies
Hmm.
including some of the big ones. It's more of a part-time thing. It just you get paid if you're on this show and this show. Are you doing two shows a season?
Yeah.
Are you doing three? Like, do you know what I mean? It's so different.
Yes. Well, I think like the amount that I get paid relative to the demand at this specific house, I think because it's a B theater, like in any given week, we've been averaging like 3 or 4 couple hour long rehearsals and then like a show. And that's it. And like,
Oh wow.
so, right. And so to be paid full time for that amount of my schedule is, and the other thing is too, it's like unlike in America where you have to, if you're in the chorus, you have to show up absolutely sort of ready to go the first day because there's not a long rehearsal process, right?
Right.
Because there's funding here, you can rehearse something for months. I mean, the chorus parts to Maria Stuarda, which are coming, they've been working on it for months. Otello was months, and you are not expected to learn a note outside of your rehearsal time. So if they do not get you prepared enough that you're comfortable, memorized to do it, that's their fault. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of when you're in a
Wow.
place where there's funding. Also, if you have a fest contract with a chorus, when the intendant changes, your job is secure. You have full health care. You have a pension fund. You are working like I'm averaging like 10 hours a week. There are no expectations for me to like do anything extra. I'm doing that tiny little premiered part in the upcoming opera. And it's just because, I mean, it's a page, right? And it's like, every single show and every single rehearsal I'm paid more because of that. Like anytime you do more than like 12 measures of music, you get paid more.
Wow.
Yes, if you need to take off, if you are not a fest contract like I'm not because I'm just covering, because I don't have a permanent position. If I need to take an audition, I'm allowed to go do that. They legally are not allowed to stop you from taking off if you need to take another audition because you have to be ready after, you know?
And just as a
So,
reminder, that's
yeah.
because you're filling in for someone who
Yes.
is on leave for her pregnancy.
She just had her baby, a healthy baby boy, in December. And so I thought I was only going to be here till March of this year. And just last week, they asked me to stay, and now I'm going to be here till January of next year. So just like that, I went from a 3 month, maybe kind of doing this to like 15 months, right? And so I
Wow.
think, and it's not to say that everything's so perfect and amazing, but it is to say that like the difference of the funding is like, I mean, the benefits you get to enjoy because of that, vis-a-vis having time for yourself, affording your life, and the cost of living. The cost of living here is ridiculously lower compared to the States. I mean, my apartment in Jersey was $2,200 a month for one bedroom. This is $880 for a two, you know?
Wow.
And yeah, and like everything truly, for most things that pertain to me anyway, like food and consumer goods, are far, far, far cheaper except for clothing. But that's a whole other thing. So when you add in the cost of living, the time you gain back in your day, the respect you get, and then also just like it's a really healthy place for an artist. You like just, in the chorus too. It's like you really there's a lot of good that comes from that. So yeah, so it's been a really happy transition for me, and I'm glad I get to stay for this next year as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that anyone watching this who is maybe a singer or a parent of a singer, or, they might have
Hmm.
more questions. Would it be okay to sort of, I mean, I've linked your name on the Facebook little blurb that I said that we were doing.
The blue.
I feel like people might want to reach out and ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Give him the email. Give him the email.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
slap that in.
Slap it
Um,
in.
is there anything else that you'd like to mention about your journey thus far or moving forward,
Hmm.
whether that be encouragement or uh, or anything else before we say tschüss?
Yes, sehr gut. Yeah. I think if you want to do something, you should just do it. And that's not to kind of discount all the people who've helped me along the way, which we found out are many. That's my style. But I think you should just do it. I don't know. If COVID taught me anything, if majoring in other things and following my other interests, sort of trying to ignore what your heart really wants, they were fun vignettes, you know what I mean? But I think like at the end of the day, if something really makes you light up, right? You want to just put whatever it is for you, you need to put yourself in an environment where you're able to pursue that as fully as you can. That's all I would say, really. Maybe working in America is the answer for your unique situation. Maybe working in Germany, anywhere. I don't know, Timbuktu, wherever makes sense for you, you need to always try to put yourself in that environment.
Wow.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for all of the
Yeah.
insight and specific details, and congratulations on getting your visa and landing this job and all that lies ahead. It's
Yes.
super, super exciting for you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank
All
you for
right.
having me.
Well, yeah, absolutely. All right. Until next time. Tschüss.
It's been under the hood.
Wait, what else do they say? Auf Wiedersehen. Auf Wiedersehen. Yeah.
Or bis später, until
Bis
later.
später.
Bis
Yeah, yeah.
bald is like bis is until soon. Yeah, but everybody says like tschüss, tschüssi,
Tschüss.
or they say ciao ciao too. So ciao
Did you ever
ciao
use the Treffpunkt Deutsch textbook in your German classes in undergrad?
in college. Yes, we
Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you
And then there was like
remember?
Treffpunkt Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Well,
it.
I remember there was this like family that went all the way through. I had a purple book. I don't remember what version or volume it was, but I remember there was like this man named Herr Montcalm, and
Okay.
he had his daughter, I think, was named Stephanie. So he would be like,
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
How do you know he said that? Was it a video, or you just read it like that in your
It
head?
was like there were like, shut up. All right. Well, thanks again, and good luck for all that lies ahead. That's great.
Tschüss, Stephanie.
Tschüss.